Deep in the frozen heart of Montana's Big Sky country, Jack Miller sat behind the controls of a massive Union Pacific train. Suddenly, a pack of gray wolves appeared on the tracks, refusing to move as the iron horse roared toward them. Jack Miller was a man of the rails. To him, the steel tracks stretching across the American West weren't just a job. They were his family's legacy. His grandfather had helped lay these ties, and his father had driven these same routes for 40 years. In the cabin of his locomotive, Jack kept a small, dented Stanley thermos, the same one his dad carried. It was a symbol of reliability in a world that felt increasingly fast and cold. The winter of 2024 had been a brutal one for Montana. The snow was piled 6 feet high in the mountain passes, and the wind howled through the canyons like a wounded animal. Jack was hauling 50 cars of lumber and coal toward the coast. It was a routine run, or so he thought. He sipped his black coffee, watching the rhythmic sweep of the windshield wipers. The world outside was a blur of white and shadow. The heavy engine hummed beneath his feet, a comforting, mechanical heartbeat. But that peace was about to be ripped away. Jack saw them at a distance. At first, they were just dark specks against the blinding white. He reached for the horn, giving it a long, sharp blast to clear the way. Usually, deer or elk would scatter instantly, but these specks didn't move. As the train closed the gap, Jack's heart skipped a beat. It was a pack of gray wolves. They weren't just crossing, they were standing in a deliberate line across the rails. Jack blasted the horn again, the sound booming off the rock walls. The wolves stood their ground, their fur matted with ice, their eyes fixed on the massive steel plow heading straight for them. Every rule Jack knew told him to stay the course. You don't stop a freight train for wildlife. It's too dangerous. But something in the lead wolf's stance, a desperate, terrifying bravery, made his hand fly to the emergency brake. He threw the lever. The sound was like a scream from the depths of the earth. Thousands of tons of steel protested, sparks raining down like a fireworks show in the blizzard. The cabin lurched, throwing Jack against the console. He gripped the wheel, praying the train wouldn't jump the tracks. Finally, with one last agonizing groan, the iron giant stopped. It was mere inches from the lead wolf's muzzle. The silence that followed was heavier than the roar of the engine. Jack sat in the sudden quiet, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He looked through the glass. The lead wolf hadn't moved. It stood there, its golden eyes staring directly into Jack's soul. It wasn't a look of aggression. It was a look of expectation. Jack felt a strange pull. He knew he should stay in the cab and call dispatch. But his gut, that old Montana instinct, told him there was more to this story. He grabbed his heavy canvas coat and a powerful flashlight. He stepped out of the cabin, the ladder rungs icy under his boots. The wind hit him like a physical blow, nearly knocking him off his feet. He walked to the front of the train, his heart pounding. The wolves didn't snarl. They didn't move to attack. Instead, the pack slowly parted, forming a path through the deep snow. They were inviting him in. Jack followed the beam of his light between the steel rails. He expected to find a kill or perhaps a wounded cub. But what he saw made the coffee in his stomach turn to ice. There was a man lying face down in the snow. "Sam," Jack whispered, his voice cracking. He rushed forward, falling to his knees. He turned the man over and his breath caught. It was old Sam Houston. Sam was a legend, a retired park ranger who had spent his life protecting the wolves of this valley. He was the man who had fought for their survival when the rest of the world wanted them gone. But Sam wasn't just hurt. He was shackled. Heavy rusted chains were padlocked around his ankles, securing him firmly to the iron rail. His hands were raw, the skin stripped away from his desperate attempts to free himself. His face was a ghostly shade of blue, his eyelashes crusted with frost. This wasn't an accident. This was a death sentence. Jack realized with a jolt of fury that someone had done this on purpose. They had left Sam here to be crushed by the very train Jack was driving. Jack looked up at the wolves. They were circling now, their bodies creating a windbreak around the dying man. They hadn't been blocking the train to be stubborn. They were protecting their protector. They knew the Iron Horse was coming, and they had offered their own lives as a shield to stop it. Jack grabbed his flashlight and looked into the dark woods. He felt a prickle on the back of his neck. The monsters who had chained Sam weren't animals. They were humans, and they might still be watching. Jack scrambled back toward the train, his mind racing. He needed tools. He needed to be fast. Sam's pulse was a tiny flickering candle in a hurricane. Jack climbed back into the cab and grabbed a heavy-duty bolt cutter from the emergency kit. He also grabbed a wool blanket and his thermos of coffee. He radioed the dispatcher, his voice steady despite the adrenaline. "I've got a man down on the tracks. He's chained. Get a medevac out here now." The dispatcher's voice was full of shock, promising help, but the storm was worsening. A helicopter would be hours away. Jack ran back to Sam. He worked with a feverish intensity. The metal was frozen, making it incredibly difficult to cut. Snap! The first chain broke. He wrapped the blanket around Sam, who let out a low, pained groan. "I've got you, Sam. It's Jack, Miller's boy. You're gonna be okay." But as he reached for the second shackle, the wolves suddenly went stiff. The air changed. The wind seemed to stop, replaced by a heavy, suffocating tension. The wolves turned their backs to Jack and Sam, facing the darkness of the pines. A low, vibrating growl started in the alpha's chest, a sound of pure, primal warning. Jack looked up, his flashlight beam cutting through the swirling snow. He saw them, two pale, emerald-green eyes reflecting the light. It was a mountain lion, a massive tom, easily 200 pounds of muscle and hunger. In a normal winter, a lion wouldn't dream of approaching a wolf pack in a train, but this wasn't a normal winter. The lion was starving, and it had smelled the scent of blood and weakness. It began to creep down the embankment, its movements as fluid as spilled ink. Jack felt a surge of terror. He was armed with nothing but a pair of bolt cutters, but he wasn't alone. The wolves didn't retreat to save themselves. They moved closer to Jack and Sam, baring their teeth. The lion let out a scream, a sound like a woman's shriek that made Jack's hair stand on end. It launched itself from a rock, aiming for the easiest target, Sam. But the alpha wolf was faster. He intercepted the lion midair, a blur of gray hitting a blur of tan. The two predators crashed into the snow, a chaotic mess of fur and fangs. The sound was sickening, the wet thud of bodies and the snapping of jaws. The rest of the pack joined in, nipping at the lion's flanks, forcing it back. In the middle of the carnage, Jack noticed a second tragedy. Just a few yards away, in the brush, a female wolf was struggling. She wasn't part of the fight because she couldn't be. Her leg was caught in a massive, illegal steel jaw trap, the kind poachers use. She was the mother of the pack. She had been the bait. The poachers had used her to lure the pack, and when Sam had come to free her, they had ambushed him. Jack realized the lion was just a distraction of nature. The true evil was the trap. He looked at Sam, then at the mother wolf. He had to make a choice. He slammed the bolt cutters onto Sam's final shackle. Crack! The chain gave way. Sam was free. Jack then turned his attention to the mother wolf. The alpha was still tangled with the lion, both animals bleeding into the white snow. Jack crawled toward the trapped mother. She snapped at him, her eyes wide with pain and fear. "Easy, girl. I'm a friend," Jack whispered. The alpha broke away from the lion for a second, looking at Jack. In an incredible moment of understanding, the alpha gave a short, sharp bark. The mother wolf went still. She let Jack approach. Jack used every bit of his strength to pry the heavy steel jaws apart. It was a struggle against cold and rusted iron. With a final heave, the trap popped open. The mother wolf pulled her mangled leg free, whimpering. The lion, seeing that the pack was now fully focused on it, and that its easy meal was gone, let out one last hiss and vanished back into the shadows of the timber. The fight was over, but the war for survival was just beginning. Jack helped the mother wolf limp toward the train. He then picked up Sam, whose body was dangerously cold. He carried the old man up the stairs of the locomotive, his muscles screaming in protest. To his amazement, the alpha wolf followed him right up the steps. The wolf didn't try to bite. It just stood by the door, watching as Jack laid Sam on the floor of the warm cabin. Jack brought the mother wolf inside too, laying her on a pile of rags in the corner. You might think the danger had passed, but Mother Nature wasn't done with Jack Miller yet. And what Sam whispered when he finally opened his eyes, it changed everything. Jack restarted the engine. He needed to get to the next station, a small depot called Wolf Creek, where help could meet them. But the storm had become a monster. The tracks were buried under 3 feet of fresh powder. The wheels of the massive train began to slip. The engine roared, black smoke pouring into the white sky, but the train wouldn't move. "Don't do this to me," Jack pleaded, hitting the controls. "Not now." The train shuddered and stalled. The heater died. The silence returned, but this time it was deadly. In the cold, Sam's breathing became even more shallow. The mother wolf licked her wounds, her eyes fading. Jack felt a crushing weight of failure. He was trapped in a dead machine in the middle of a Montana blizzard. Suddenly, a sound came from outside, a scratching, rhythmic sound. Jack looked out the window. The rest of the pack, the younger wolves, were at the front of the train. They were using their paws to dig at the snow on the tracks. It was an impossible task for animals, but they were doing it with a frantic, desperate energy. Inspired by their courage, Jack jumped into the engine's maintenance hatch. He worked by the light of his flashlight, his fingers turning blue. He found the frozen fuel line. He used his own warm coffee from the thermos to thaw the valve, pouring the precious liquid over the metal. He prayed to his father, to the mountains, to anyone listening. He turned the key. The engine coughed. It spat. And then, with a thunderous roar, it came back to life. The lights flickered on. Warm air began to blow. Jack put the train in gear. The wheels gripped. They were moving. The journey to Wolf Creek felt like it took a lifetime. Jack kept one hand on the throttle and one hand on Sam's shoulder. The alpha wolf sat at Jack's feet, its head resting on his boot. It was a scene no one would ever believe. A train engineer, a dying ranger, and the kings of the forest, all huddled together for warmth. Sam began to stir. His eyes flickered open, landing on the mother wolf. A tiny, weak smile touched his lips. "You got her," he whispered. "Thank you, Jack." "Rest, Sam. We're almost there," Jack said, his voice thick with emotion. As the train finally pulled into the Wolf Creek depot, the scene was chaotic. Police cars and an ambulance were waiting, their lights casting long, dancing shadows on the snow. But when Jack opened the cabin door, the officers froze. They saw the blood, the chains, and then they saw the wolves. "Step back!" one officer shouted, reaching for his holster. "There are wolves in that cab." "Don't you dare!" Jack roared, stepping in front of the animals. "Lower your weapons." These wolves saved his life. They stood on the tracks to stop this train. They fought off a lion to keep him safe. The crowd went silent. The officers slowly lowered their guns. The paramedics rushed forward, taking Sam from Jack's arms. As Sam was being loaded into the ambulance, his daughter Sarah pushed through the crowd. She hadn't spoken to her father in 5 years after a bitter argument about his life in the woods. She saw him, fragile, broken, but alive. She fell to her knees by the stretcher, grabbing his hand. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I'm here." Sam looked at her, his voice a mere thread. "The wolves, Sarah. They kept the seat warm for you." The emotional dam broke. There wasn't a dry eye in the station, but the story had one final, incredible twist. As the mother wolf was being moved to a local vet clinic, a young boy from the town pointed toward the tracks. Out of the darkness, 4 small, fuzzy shapes emerged. The pups. They had followed the scent of the train for miles through the snow. They tumbled toward their mother, yapping and wagging their tails. The pack was whole. The circle was closed. The investigation that followed was swift. The poachers were local men, cowards who had been angry at Sam for costing them money by reporting their illegal traps. With the evidence of the chains and the camera Jack found near the tracks, they were sentenced to 20 years in prison. Sam Houston recovered, though he walked with a limp for the rest of his days. He moved in with his daughter and his new grandchildren, but he didn't leave the woods entirely. He built a small cabin on her property, right at the edge of the forest. Jack Miller was honored as a hero, though he refused any medals. He said the only heroes that night were the ones with fur and 4 legs. He continued to drive the Union Pacific route, but he changed his routine. Every time Jack passes that bridge in the high country, he slows the train down. He leans out the window and looks toward the ridgeline. And every time, without fail, he sees them. A pack of gray wolves standing tall against the Montana sky. Jack pulls the whistle, 3 short, sharp blasts. A salute of respect. And from the trees, a long, soulful howl rises to meet the sound. It's a reminder that in the wild heart of America, the greatest strength isn't found in steel or fire, but in the quiet bond of gratitude that connects us all. It's amazing how a wild animal can show more humanity than a human, isn't it? If Sam and Jack's story reminded you that there is still good in this world, please hit that like button. I want to hear your thoughts. Do you believe animals can feel gratitude? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to see another heart-pounding rescue from the great outdoors, click the video on your screen right now. Trust me, the ending of that one is just as shocking. Thanks for watching and stay kind out there.